you'll find that, going to grad school without a TA in some ways is easier. However, if you start looking at going into academia and you want a job, I can just tell you, I'm on those committees. Like, if you see that somebody was a TA, you're like, well, that's, they already have 2 years more experience than somebody else.
Yep.
Right. You do as much as a TA sometimes as a professor does, in a different way.
Yeah.
But like, the hours that you're crunching is good. I mean, when I look at it, it's like, it's not even about sometimes how well, like, maybe you taught. It's just the fact that, like, could you juggle that schedule? Like, that's an important thing. Like, time management is like, you're just not going to get that without suffering.
Yeah. You have to go through the deep needs.
Yeah. It's just,
in my case, one of the faculty is pretty small, but they're kind of down a full-time professor because, long story short, the bass teacher, he was going to retire, but they couldn't rehire. So he's kind of just adjunct. So what's that?
Is that Jeff?
Yeah, Jeff Halsey.
Yeah, he's a bad dude, man. I love Jeff.
Super bad.
Hey, tell Jeff I said hi. I haven't talked to him for probably 10 years at least.
Oh, I will. Yeah, I see him all the time.
Yeah, he's a stud. He's a great dude.
Cool. We were hanging out last night.
Man, great player.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. My sister went to Bowling Green and studied with all those guys.
Oh, seriously?
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. Do you know Emily Wheeler?
I know the name.
And Brent Wheeler, they're down in Texas. That's my sister.
Oh, my gosh. I did not know that.
Yeah, she runs the guitar program he runs the guitar program now at South Plains Community College outside of Lubbock. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I had no idea that.
Yeah, she's really cool, but she went to Bowling Green, so.
Okay. Yeah, it's funny, like, I didn't know how deep of a history the school had. I mean, it's been around forever. I mean, Halsey's been there like 38 years.
Yeah. And if I remember right, they might have one of the best music libraries in the country.
It's literally the biggest.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
It's like over 1 million records or something.
I used to go there and do workshops about every 2 or 3 years, but I haven't done it for a long, long time. So
we got to bring you out because the school has a lot of money and a lot of opportunities for bringing people out.
Really?
Yeah. So.
Oh man, that's awesome.
Actually, I got a grant to fund this podcast from school, which is cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Trying to make it happen.
Yeah. Well, don't order your Ferrari just yet.
All right.
You can start looking at color options, but
Sure. The sports package,
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, we can't all be like you with your cars and motorcycles and stuff. I said we can't all be like you with the cars and motorcycles.
Oh, yeah.
Man.
Oh, well,
you figured it out.
It's kind of funny because I always make this joke, it's like basically what that is that's the money all my friends spend on alcohol and drugs.
That's a good point.
Yeah. I don't drink. I've always been clean. And so I've been able to buy motorcycles and Porsches.
It's a pretty good trade-off, I would say.
It's a long-term trade-off. It took me 25 years.
Yep.
But in the moment, there would be people that would argue, no, it's not worth the it's not worth the trade-off.
I mean, on a real level, it's really hard to even just to try to budget and save and think about 20 years in the future. I've sort of been able to get there. The older I get, I'm like, I can think 5 years ahead, and that's kind of like weird for me.
Yeah. Well, I think one thing, to think about with that is just, I got some really good advice, like when I was younger. I should say, like, all jokes aside, like, this business has been really, it's been really good to me, like financially, I'm not like rolling in it, but I live a pretty nice lifestyle, and it's just, I love the music. And I like to consider myself an artist. I'm not like I don't think that I've been conducted myself, as an entire sellout, but I have been, pretty careful about decisions I've made. And I always wanted to be in a position where I could say no.
Yeah.
To things. And there's like a certain sense of empowerment or power even that comes with being able to say no.
Mm-hmm.
And you can say no when you have some control, artistic control, financial control, a few of those things. And one thing was just, I was playing golf one time with an older guy, and he's like, people that understand interest make money and people who don't spend money. And, I was like, wow, that's some good advice. So it really kept me, living within my means during like some of the lean years.
Yeah.
I was really careful about how I spent my money. And also, when I did get money, I was really careful to get it away from me so I couldn't spend it.
Sure.
And that sounds ridiculous, but things like you're buying land, even if it's just a little bit, get that away from you. Right. It's you're buying an asset, and it's something that you can't spend with a you just can't spend it real.
Yeah, it's not liquid.
Real quick. Yeah. So that's, all like non-musical stuff, but it has put me in a position, we were kind of joking about the motorcycles and the Porsches and stuff, but take that away. What it does is it allows me, one, to do cool projects, because I have, I usually have a budget that I can work with when I fund my own projects,
mm-hmm.
Which gives me some artistic control. And it also, it just keeps me doing things it allows me to do things I like to do. And when I'm in a good mood, I'm in a good mood when I'm doing things I like to do, musically or otherwise. When I'm in a good mood, I'm like creative. Like it's a cool cycle, right? Like you can get into like a healthy space with a lot of that. So,
you think teaching has been the thing that's kind of facilitated that, that base level of like?
Oh, totally.
Making
it
for me. Yeah.
Real early on in my career, I realized, that I was like, my career, for me to just be happy, has to be multifaceted. I love teaching.
Mm-hmm.
I love the human interaction that happens with teaching. And I, it's like, I know people sometimes say, well, I've got to give back and all that stuff. Yeah. We all believe that. But there's also a very selfish aspect of teaching that, for me, which is I get to be around all these really like high energy, brilliant young minds that like kind of keep me young. I mean, there's no other way to say it. It's like, I look at my relationship with younger students as really one of, reciprocation. I mean, it's good that, they get to study with, a guy of my age or vintage who came up during a different time, and even because of the zip code I came up in, we were behind the times 20 years, probably, where I was. So like, and I was talking to some people about this actually last night, but like, even for a guy my age, like I grew up playing 4 nights a week when I was young, real young, like in dance bands,
Wow.
Literally 5 hours a night, Freddie Green, or playing Wyoming bars, from 9 to 2, as a teenager, and, like kind of going through this thing that doesn't really exist anymore. Right. And even for people my age, it's kind of, it's kind of a rare thing for somebody to have come up with that. I had a lot of older guys, and I mean old guys that took me under their wing. And so I had this like experience that, people in their 60s and 70s now like had that type of experience,
Sure.
of
Yeah.
what I had. And it doesn't really exist. So that's kind of a cool thing or an insight, I think, that, for a middle-aged teacher, I get to share kind of that mindset and perspective. But on the selfish end, I love all the young people, man, because it's like, because the times are different and they keep me excited about music. They keep, you guys that are younger, you get your thumb on the pulse of like what's going on now, because it's socially relevant to you,
Sure.
And it's really good. I mean, like I said, selfishly, it keeps me in a really young and also in like a learning and growth kind of mindset that I really enjoy having that in my life. But the performing thing was going to be tough. I knew that,
Yeah.
to like, hey, if you're just going to perform,
Yep.
it's going to be tough. So yeah, I focused a lot on the education aspect of things. I tried to be really thoughtful about, looking forward.
Mm-hmm.
But like I was trying to get into the online learning space, like really almost before anybody was
Yep.
doing it, like in the mid 2000s. And I just saw, I was like, this is going to be, important. In fact, I was working on, because I host all my stuff on musiclessons.com right now. That's one of the sites I do, and I was talking to somebody about that, and they had reminded me. They're like, you know what? You told me 18 months ago to get an account and start a studio here because you said and I don't remember saying this, but they told me, they said, you said all that has to happen is one bad thing and we could all go to online learning, right?
Wow.
And I had kind of forgot it, but I remember, but when he said that, I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, that was you that I had this conversation with. And so Zach, it was kind of crazy because like in March when the pandemic, shut everything down, it literally took me 3 hours to move my entire life onto online learning.
Wow.
And so I was just lucky that I'd, always kind of been in that space and tried to think about like what the possibilities were,
Well, that makes you such a great teacher and mentor because you always, like you said, you had those experiences that maybe people my age don't get, but you also have your ear to the ground. You're into technology. You're into just all the new stuff. Like it's a total two-way street. Yeah.
And when you say that, I'm like, I have to admit, in some ways, I'm like the most non-technical guy. Like in some ways, I'm an 80 or 90-year-old man. I mean, really, like on a micro level, I'm probably like a 90-year-old man. On a macro level, I like seeing how all this stuff works on the big level. And I like, this is going to sound kind of, a little weird, but like I'm kind of more excited about the macro stuff for everybody else more than me. I'm kind of in a position where I'm okay, like with what I'm doing with my career. I don't need to advance, but like somebody your age, like I love it. I love seeing like what the possibilities are for like, the younger generation. There's some things that are really concerning to me also, about that, to be honest. But
like what?
But that's a great follow-up question. I'm concerned, and I was just talking with one of my friends in New York about this, that it used to mean something if you had played with certain people.
Yep.
Like it used to mean something if, you played with Benny Golson.
Sure.
Or it meant something if you had worked with, and then insert one of 1 million great players, right?
Yeah.
It used to mean something. And now, a lot of young musicians that are, doing what we do don't know who those people are, which is concerning enough.
Sure.
But also there's not like an urgency to find out who those people were. Not as much. And of course there's exceptions. I'm not throwing an entire, age group under the bus at all. I'm just saying, because there's some real positives that happen with this also, right? I mean, for every negative, I mean, that is something I find concerning. But the positive is that the gatekeepers don't have as much power as they used to.
Right.
Right. And that's kind of the trade-off. So I think that it's, I don't know. I've come to terms with the fact that in some ways I'm the salty old guy in the room, but I'm also the one that's like rooting for all the young people to like get it done and stick it to the man.
Sure. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, because I mean, in today's climate, you could very easily have whatever career or exposure without ever playing in one of those hallmark, mentorship type bands as a sideman.
Right.
I mean, how much do you think of it? I mean, do you think the onus is more on the younger generation, or do you think there's also some aspect of, just lack of gigs for maybe these older people, or that?
Yeah. Well, and I'll take it one step further. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off because you were probably headed here, but like, I think that there's like the generation my age and older has to own the fact that in certain ways, I think we failed the younger musicians. In this sense that like there haven't been as many gigs, and I think a lot of older musicians have not embraced the idea of mentoring as much as maybe we should.
Yeah.
I recognized this several years ago, as I was complaining about that I had played a gig with some younger professionals, and frankly, like the music was not happening, and there was a lot of deficiencies that were, that I felt were really, really apparent, and I was complaining about that, but I was also complaining about a lack of knowledge of just some cultural and professional things and behaviors that I would expect from musicians that I'm working with. And it kind of hit me like a ton of, it kind of helped me. I mean, it hit me like a ton of bricks. Like I was on the phone complaining with somebody. I was like, man, this is just concerning to me. And then it hit me. I was like, yeah, well, Corey, you have to be the one to change this. Like you're in a position where you can change this. So in Utah, I started a project with a saxophone player named David Halliday that was just called the David Halliday, or the DHCC project, right? And so what we did is we co-led a band. We had an agreement with a club. Once a month, we put a band together, and we would do a 6-month run of gigs once a month with younger professionals or more experienced college students. And they had to audition to get into the band. They had to send in they had to send in an audition, like, a video audition or whatever. We kind of ran it like a college, entrance exam. I mean, as far as the playing's concerned. But then they got to play with us, and we would have a different theme every month. Like, okay, it's bebop tunes this month, and like, here are bebop tunes that you need to know, and here's some things you need to think about. And then we would play the gig, and at the club. Then for about a half an hour or 45 minutes after the gig, we would like carve out an extra set when the club cleaned out to just sit down and talk to the band.
Wow.
About like what we thought went well, what we thought didn't go well. And and it was everything. Like, you're not wearing the right threads.
Sure.
You showed up 10 minutes before the gig. Like, you can do that maybe if you're a seasoned pro, but like if you're the young person in the band, you should be there 45 minutes early to like make sure your music's together. Make sure that like you have time to move things around the bandstand if you need to like accommodate and show respect to, the rest of the band. And maybe ask questions about, like the music and some of these things. But it was also things like, I remember one of the best lessons that I gave the guys is I said, okay, who tipped the waitress on the free meal you got tonight? Because they'd get a free meal, right? And the club would pay them and give them a free meal, and then they were getting this kind of mentoring experience. And like nobody raised their hand. I'm like, okay, so let me tell you what's wrong with this. That waitress is working just like you, right? And so even though it's a complimentary meal, her time was not complimentary.
Yeah, exactly.
Or his time is not complimentary. And I'm like, so if they pour you a water, tip them. Mm-hmm. If they bring you a free meal, tip them on the full price of the meal, because one, it's just a good thing to do.
Yeah.
Second, there is a good chance that either the bartender or the waiter or waitress is either friends or dating the club owner. Right?
Yeah, totally.
We've all seen it like a million times, right? So if you take care of the help, they say good things about you to the owner. You'll keep the gig forever.
Absolutely.
Right? If you have friends inside the club, like, you're going to be okay. So, this seems like really small stuff, right? But like, it's things that it's those kinds of things that I really realized. I was like, as a musician at the age of, like doing some mentoring, there's a lot of things that we have failed, and we have to do our part to remedy that, and, there's a lot of stuff, in our current culture or whatever of, like young people versus old people, I feel that sometimes. And I think that old people really have to kind of step up and say, okay, like, there are systems that don't exist that we all came up through. We got to figure out how to keep that alive, even though even though the game has changed. So I had that project in Salt Lake for a long time. I've always tried to, be aware of that at things like, music festivals, guitar festivals, all those kinds of things. That there's just things that were done for me by being around, mentors that was really awesome. And technology has taken some of that opportunity away, but it doesn't mean it should go away.
Yeah. What do you think, the role of school in that? School is such a different scenario, but sometimes for a lot of people, that's their only opportunity to play and get that mentorship. So how can you kind of bring that real world stuff into the school experience? Because not everyone's going to want to, set up the club thing like you did. Right.
Well, and not everybody can.
Yeah, exactly.
We happen to have a really great forward-thinking club owner, and booking agent that was like, yeah, this is cool. I see what you're trying to do, and it was, it was pretty, the school thing, there's that kind of double-sided thing again, right? Because it's like, for the music that I like to play, which is jazz, it's like, look, let's just face it, outside or in the United States, it's dead without academia.
Yeah.
most of the big festivals that pay artists any kind of money are affiliated with some kind of educational, institution. Right. Musicians, they make a little money playing, but most of us make money touring to play, but we're going to make more money doing workshops or residencies. And so it's kind of interesting, right? You have this culture now where it's like you go to school to learn music so you can teach music in a school.
Yeah, exactly.
It's kind of weird. It's become this cyclical thing. But I think, if you're in a program where step one, at least the people you're studying with like recognize that that's a thing, that's the first step.
Yeah.
Because then you can be around them and they start to create, like I've been around a lot of programs where they have really cool stuff going on where the professors will set up things to like blend a real world aspect of learning with, an academic. I guess some people would argue, and I think when I watch, what I see on Instagram, I think maybe people have accepted that like academia and academic type music really is the real world now. Like that's the real world.
What do you define as academic music?
What was that?
What do you define as academic music?
Well, I think just loosely, it traditionally has been, classical art music and jazz.
Okay.
Right? But I think that's starting to, broaden because there are programs, of course, that, will approach, popular music,
sure,
even country music in an academic way. And what I mean by that is in a systematic way of learning. And here's the maybe the dangerous part, in assessment. Right? Because, Charlie Parker never got a grade, right? I mean, it's like your grade was getting hired by other musicians, that's sure. When you knew that you had gotten an A.
Or a symbol thrown at you.
Yeah. And it is weird. I still struggle with this. I mean, I just, in this way, sometimes I have to really be honest with myself and be like, man, you're a terrible professor because I hate grading. Like I despise it because for a couple of different reasons, because I don't think that somebody's final performance in a class or in a recital or whatever is really, is really an accurate reward for the work that's gone in, for a couple of reasons, because nobody masters this music while they're in school. It's very, very rare, right? I mean, it takes years and years and years outside of school to really understand what it is to be, like a jazz musician or probably even a classical musician, although that tradition is a little different, And so, I almost like to assess my students and, and give them a grade reward or whatever based on like how well I think they're digesting the material, even if it's slow, because I've had students, Zach, and you've probably seen it too, that get things very quickly on a surface level.
Yeah. Right.
But then I've had students that like really struggle with the performance aspect of it, but it's because they're really, truly trying to master it on a deep level. And who's going to be better off in 7 years?
Yeah.
It's going to be the student that went slow and deep, right? And so maybe the senior recital is not going to be reflective of somebody that was like, oh, this was our best student, right? But it's like they're going to be the one that's really, really killing it in 7 years.
Yep.